All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. My name is Pete Deely, and my professor, Professor Lucas Hubo, is on the road today. And so my guest today is stuck with just me. But I will do my
Yeah.
best. I'll do my best to be a good representative of my team. And we we continue to be so fortunate. We're blessed in that we have been getting just extraordinary people to talk with us, and I'm very grateful. And today's guest, special man. We I feel like when we met, it was immediately like you made me feel so comfortable, so at home talking to you. I really appreciated your generosity of spirit. So today we have Mr. Julian Torres with us. There he is, my brother. Welcome.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm
How you
doing
doing, man?
good. I'm
Dude,
doing,
thank you so much for the opportunity, man. Thank you.
oh, well, you were generous to spend time with us. And you're a person that's done like you have a lot of things that you've accomplished, and we're going to talk about, some of them. But uh one of the things I've done this too, like oh, by the way, this is my fellow blue belt. So the black belt is away. So you're among blue belts today, a wrist locker extraordinaire, by
Yeah,
the way, and Julian. But
yeah,
I want
coming
to
from the
ask you
hood.
about your beekeeping. Like I've kept bees myself in my life. I kept them in an urban setting in Central Phoenix, and I know you keep bees. Could you tell us just a little bit about that? And
Yeah, man, dude. So back in 20, I want to say 2016, 2017, we were at we my family and I we were at Santa Cruz on the boardwalk in California, and we're kind of just sitting there, and a bee kind of lands like near my heart, and I'm like,
whoa,
that's weird, man. At the beach, like that's
yeah,
never. There's not many flowers out here. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so like I was like, what is this creature? You know what I mean? What's all? I wasn't scared. It wasn't doing nothing. You know what I mean? And I
sure.
just picked it up and held it on my finger, and it flew away. And I was like, I immediately got intrigued and started doing research, and I started getting
Hmm.
obsessed, starting to learn that
Yeah,
the ins and outs of the beehive. And I was like, what is that, dude? And I was like, and it slowly started to become like the more I learned, the more I was like, these are something I'm interested in.
yeah, yeah.
I could, and I was like, my wife, I was like, typical Julian spirit. I was like, we gotta get like 15 hives. We gotta. She's like, nah, man, dude, we're not gonna. No, we got small kids, venomous insects. Nah,
Right,
like
right,
you don't
yeah.
even like good initiative, bad judgment type of. And so she was just like, she was like, you got to do more research. You got to, and I was like, you're right, you're right. Um, and during COVID, Michigan State has this program where it's called Heroes to Hives. And
Okay,
so I'm a disabled veteran.
right, yeah,
My left leg is below the knee amputee, my right leg is above the knee amputee,
right,
and so and we can get into that here in
yeah,
a
yeah,
minute, but
right,
but the V so for veterans enrolled into the VA program, every now and then we get these emails, and the of programs that are offered through the
right.
VA. And I got this email from this Heroes to Hives program from Michigan State, and it's a 16-week long course, and they teach you everything you need to know about being a beekeeper.
Right.
I didn't know there was a class. I didn't know that there was a certification course, and there actually is.
Hmm.
And so I took that and graduated, um, and got a beehive.
Right.
So this would be my second winter um, with the beehive. Now within a year, dude, I grew another one. So
Okay.
I
Nice.
took that split,
Split the
and
nuke. Hmm.
dude, I mean, I have uh two 20 frame deeps
Wow.
of
Wow.
hives. Yeah, yeah, dude. So we're going into winter pretty good. I didn't harvest this year the honey,
Right.
because there's a lot of reports of a cold winter coming,
Okay.
and so I will leave that honey for them over winter, and harvested in March. So
Yeah.
my first batch is going to be next year. So I'm pretty stoked, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
When you say that, having raised bees myself, a lot of things I think are present in what you just told me, and that's you got to be patient to do what you did, like that
yeah,
means, and every day you got to go do something, you got to make sure everything there's no mites coming in there that you got to like be aware of, and that everything is healthy. And so that persistence, is something that produces, honey is the great metaphor, right? Like but you still got to wait, because if you took the honey prematurely, you're going to weaken that hive. And so, you know,
right. Or you'll feed them just junk sugar water.
yes, right.
You
Garbage
know what I
in,
mean? So
garbage out,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So it's just like, well, if I let them, and the varroa mite and stuff like that. Like since I have such a small apiary, um, I just grab 2 frames of like brood and just kill them. You know what I
Right.
mean? Scrape
Okay.
them off,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean. Like, and if I take out that much of the brood, then we're okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think so. That's how I kind of combat the whole mite situation without using because for only 2 hives, you don't need. I mean, they only sell them in big giant gallons. You know what I mean?
True.
And I was
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
don't want the acid to be sitting around. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, man. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. No, go ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Um, the biggest thing that I think I've learned
Yeah.
is gosh, dude. Um, well, like the biggest thing I learned is that like how good I feel
Yeah.
just being around them, right?
Right.
On a selfish thing, being around them and just having everything blanketed out. I mean, when you open up a hive and there's like 60,000 bees in there,
Right.
that sound is deafening.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's you know what I mean? Like there's nothing um slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I take a lot of the stuff that I learned in combat
Right.
and in my time in the Marine Corps to be very similar to being a beekeeper.
That's so fascinating. Yeah.
You have that sense of urgency, you have that sense of danger, you have
Yes.
that sense of respect. Um, uh, and you're outdoors, you're in the sun. So we have all these things that I think that are really hitting very primitive
Yes.
wickets of the soul. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Right.
we need to do, Um, but the biggest thing that I've probably learned out of all of them, man, if you want to know, is together we are stronger.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
I do.
a bee by itself is whatever. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like it totally discard it. And you
Yes.
almost disrespect it. You're like, get out of here, dude.
Right.
You just flick it off your hand. But when you open up that hive and you see all of them looking at you,
Yes.
it's like we demand your respect.
Yeah,
You
that's
know what I
so
mean?
nicely put. Yeah, actually that's very poetic. And I love that notion of the wickets of your soul. Like I think that they are the type of thing that, as you say, can be dismissed, but if properly observed, it's a magical thing to pay attention to, and it has a certain awe-producing quality if it's properly looked at. And it's one of the things that I've enjoyed about just my observation of you, is that you seem to have a careful way of looking at things. And well, look, you mentioned it, and so I mean, it won't be evident to everybody, that's joining us now. But I mean, when we talk about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, well, that means certain things to certain people. And there are varying degrees of being uncomfortable. Not every discomfort is equal to other people's discomfort. It may be relatively equal, like, oh man, this is, I don't like the way this is going or whatever. But just,
Uh,
purely, there are things that are different than other things. And so as a soldier, you've experienced things, as a human being, you've experienced things that not many people have experienced. You have a story as a human being that is perhaps not unique. There are other people that have experienced it. You're not the only one, but you are in a small group of people on the planet who have, gone through what you've gone through. So can we talk a little bit about your story, and could you describe a little bit to me and to everybody who's going to listen to this, kind of what you have been through?
Oh, for sure, man. And uh, like, well, first off, man, I'm a Marine. You know what I
Right.
mean? United States Marine Corps. Joined in 2007. Um, I was a machine gunner by trade, and in 2010, man, we got deployed to Afghanistan. In that deployment, I mean, I was only there for like under 30 days. I think it was like 28 days or so. I had stepped on an IED,
Mm-hmm.
um, and as a result of that blast, I lost my left leg and right leg. My left is below the knee, and my right is above the knee.
Mm.
And yeah, dude. And so, since I mean, literally, dude, my life has changed. I think throughout life, you could always go back and look at pivot points
Sure.
where you were on this trajectory, and then all of a sudden you were blown out into the stratosphere
Yeah.
and changed a completely different orbit. And so, for me, it was that blast, and so everything changed. I mean, everything changed. I mean, I was on the fast track. You know, in the United States military, there's 9 ranks you can get as an enlisted personnel, whether
Right.
that be Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, doesn't matter. There's only 9 ranks you can go.
Right.
Um, and I was already at 5 of the 9
Okay.
in 3 years. So I was on the fast track. I love what I did. You
Right.
know what I mean? Really felt that this was who I was.
Right.
It just
Yes.
was like I was, and then within a blink of an eye, everything changed. And so from there, um, you kind of realize, well, not everybody, but what I did was, what am I doing here? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like, you know, um, not so much like how did I survive, but like okay, I'm here. I
Right.
survived all this stuff.
Right.
Um, you know, and I would try to prove to myself like why I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You know what I
Okay.
mean? It would be like, well, I should have died out because I bled out, or the blast took uh, my limbs right off the bat. There was no trying to save them, and so I would try to find ways of like, well, how am I like cognitively able to just be here and be
Right. Yeah.
be coherent and stuff, because the amount of pressure that it takes to remove bone and tissue and fluid
Yes. Right.
from your body is so much that like that should have crushed my brain just by the blast itself. So it's like,
Right.
you can get wrapped around the axle of being like, what am I doing here? How am I here? What am I,
Yes.
what role do I play?
Mm-hmm.
Was another one in my community, in my family. And, and then what kind of dad was I going to be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because my son at the time, he's 13 now, but at the time he was only like 6 months. No, he was like 4 months old.
Okay.
So he was just he was just a baby. I always wanted to be a dad. I
Right.
always
Yeah.
wanted,
Yeah.
I always, um, and so it was just like, well, how do I become a dad now if I can't even play tag with him? If I can't even,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it was a huge pivot point, man. It was a huge time for me to kind of reflect and uh, really move with a sense of um, intention.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So yeah, man.
Yeah, that's I when I listen to you, and I've been familiar with your story for a few months now at least, and when I think about you and what you're saying, I recognize the gap between what I know about, like, I'm listening to this story and I can imagine it, the gap between like what I think that was like and then what your experience actually was. And
Mm.
that there's no analogy in my life that is adequate to like really say, okay, like I can empathize in an honest way. I can empathize via my imagination, but what you're describing is so extreme that it's interesting to me, that you have the patience and the open heart to kind of tell us the story, understanding that like it's likely only the people who have been through something equally as extreme who can appreciate that story in the same way. I have like a million questions, and I'm going to be disciplined because I got to talk to you about 14 hours straight about stuff. But
Yeah, we can.
here's a simple question. Here's a straightforward question. It's not simple. Was the skills, the psychological toughness, the spiritual flexibility present in you prior to what happened to you, that allowed you to survive and grow and ultimately, thrive in this new context of living? Or did the experience this in this particular moment, right? Like your life changed in the literal blink of an eye. Was that the right? I mean, it didn't lead up to it. You're 28 days into this deployment, bam, an explosion. Now everything's different. Did you develop those things after that, or could you recognize in yourself prior to this event that you had them there all along, and that's what allowed you to kind of survive it? Because not all of the people who've
That's a
been through.
legit question.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, dude, that's a legit. That's legit. And you know what, dude? I don't know if anybody's ever really asked me that before.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's like, um, so I sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, so growing up, man, dude, my parents divorced when I was 10,
Right.
and there's three kids. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was the youngest, and my brother, who was the oldest, acted a certain way to that adverse childhood experience.
Okay.
My sister acted that in a certain way, but how I responded was, I would say, alarming because it was violent. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because I was scared and
Sure.
unsure about my home life, I
Hmm.
was violent. You know, if a
Okay.
guy looked at me wrong, I'd be like, "What's up, dog?"
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like, you want some, bro?
Yeah.
Or I would just straight up just punch him. There was
Okay.
no like,
It was
and
0
so
to
I was,
60, huh?
yeah, dude, and it was always like idling at. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It was just
Yeah.
like just wait. I needed, I just needed an excuse.
Right.
So so they immediately put me into counseling because they were
Sure.
like, you're uh you're of ethnic descent. You know what I mean? You're a Mexican kid. You're violent,
Hmm.
and you could be a detrimental to society if this progresses.
Okay.
So and out of the three of us, I was the only one that got counseling.
Okay.
My school
That's
intercepted
interesting.
and
Yeah.
was, dude, and it was crazy is that like this was a new program.
Okay.
So they were like it was like the right junction, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Luck of the draw, dude. And so I stayed in anger management from, and it was a program where they were like, we're going to take this kid in sixth grade and we're going to take him all the way to high school.
Yeah. Okay.
If he stays in, if he stays in the school
We'll stay
district and
with
stuff
him
like
if
that,
he stays with us. Yeah.
right? And so I was able to identify my feelings going
Okay.
into the blast, right?
Right.
Um, but I also wrestled in high school.
Right.
If we had 14 hours, like you said, Dan,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I would tell you about all the ways that leading up to my life, like, I got chills right now, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
But leading up to my life to the blast, I was groomed,
Okay.
and it was almost like if I was prepared for this, apex or this grandiosis of event. This
Yes.
this paramount event that I was going to experience. And I give a lot of credit. My last I would say, lesson learned was wrestling. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
the art, which is the art of self reliance.
Yes, yes,
You know what I mean? Like
I do.
self motivation and yeah, dude. I mean, I'm shaking right now, like talking
Yeah,
to you. You
yeah.
can't see it, man, but like, yeah, man. And
Well, let me respond to that real quick because what I want, because we're going to tie jujitsu into this, and I want to give you some opinions about what you just said to me, and just get you to tell me what you think about those opinions. First of
okay,
all, like, you reacted to this trauma, right, of your parents creating a certain home life for you, and then you had this reaction that was counterproductive to, I think, who you were as a person. And then you took the help that was offered you and used it in a way to become closer to who you actually were as a person, is what I hear in that. And then at the same time, you were being offered a chance to develop a type of internal discipline. One of the things about wrestlers, all wrestlers, I feel like every wrestler I've ever met seems to carry a certain, like, if you want someone to, you get dropped off on a desert island and you got to survive, like, please God, let it be a wrestler who's next to me, because those guys are they just don't quit. And one of the things that I really value as a human being and I've tried to cultivate in myself is a type of renaissanceism. And what I mean by that is, I don't want to be just one thing. I want to be, I've always wanted to be a dad too, and I wanted to be good at that. I've always wanted to be a husband. I've wanted to be an athlete. I've wanted to be a successful business person. And although somebody might tell me you have refused to specialize, for me, a richer life is one in which you're cultivating all these different things. So my opinion is that
100%.
I think you and I share that. I mean, you're out there. I don't know exactly what you said, like good judgment, bad like deployment of it, or whatever
Oh,
your
good,
wife.
good initiative, bad judgment.
Good initiative. Yes, that'll be on my tombstone. Um, but this is what I hear about this part of your life. You're young, however, you're open to learning. You learn, and that in these relatively safe things, you punching some kid in the face and that kid punching you in the face or whatever, although those are serious, they're not nearly as what's ahead of you in your life at this point. But
True.
you are picking up skills that in the most extreme circumstances are serving you. And so what I'm hearing is, like, in a safer environment, those skills served you in the most extreme environment. So is that a fair connection? I mean, or am I making too much out of that? Because you're a pretty young guy when you step on that IED and life is
Yeah.
different,
Yeah, I
right?
was 22. Yeah.
You're 22 and you're not, I mean, I don't think the brain's fully developing till you're about 40. So, and
Well,
I
there's
don't even mean that facetiously. I mean, like,
yeah,
like, it takes a long time to become who we are. But here you were at
yeah.
22, yet you had these things that allowed you to kind of work your way through it. So is that accurate, or how could you react to that opinion? Because maybe I'm making too much of that.
No, 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 no. And I think that like I think you're right, man, but you're missing the fact, and you mentioned this earlier about being extreme, like this extreme circumstance of
Yeah.
being an injured, of going to war,
Right.
right? Because just because you're in the military, and even if you're in the infantry,
Right.
you doesn't. I have guys that I went to so in the Marine Corps they have boot camp, and
Right.
then you go to your specialty job. Um, so my specialty job was obviously the School of Infantry.
Right.
I have friends that were in that School of Infantry with me in my class
Right.
during the height of like the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war,
Right.
never seen combat.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, and so it is unique. It's a super unique human experience. And if I could just
Tell us.
just
Yeah.
kind of expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think war is an entity.
Okay.
and war is just kind of waiting in the ether for man to help it express itself.
Okay.
And in that expression, man, the human, right? Doesn't man or woman, you
Right.
know what I
Right.
mean? Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Um, that person will experience everything in life
Yes.
10x,
Yes. Yes.
10x.
Yes. Yes.
And I believe that is the job of that person to now take that and really share what life is really all about.
Yes.
And in my opinion, the only thing what matters in life is the love, right?
Right.
Is like your unconditional willingness to die for your friend
Right.
just so that he could have one more day.
Right.
Um, the guy to the left or to the right of you, or don't get caught up on like the gender specific. It could be,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and the fact that like somebody's willing to do that for ultimately a stranger,
Right.
somebody who they never grew up with, they don't. But the level of love that I received um, from my buddies, like cleaning out my wounds
Yes. Right.
with their own water bottles, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean, and then like gingerly like wrapping me up to keep
Right.
me clean,
Yeah.
stayed like that saved my life more so than them cutting off
Yes.
the
Yes.
the
Right.
the bleeding out. So it's
Yeah.
like, you know, you don't, and these are grown ass men.
Right.
You know what I mean? These guys a few minutes ago were just raging out and were killing the enemy.
Right.
It's not like we were throwing cheese puffs at them. You know what I mean? We were
Uh,
throwing
Right.
everything the United States had to, could offer at that moment. Um, and now they're turned around and they're holding me, they're comforting me,
Yes.
they're cleaning me.
Yes.
And if you look back at that's somebody expressing their love and
Yes.
admiration for another person in a line of fire, risking their own life, doing all
Right.
these things, with completely ignoring all the dangers around them and just
Right.
focusing on
Yeah.
me. And it's such a weird. I mean, the only thing I could think of is like unique, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want to
Well,
overuse that word, man, but
yeah.
it's go ahead.
Well, I mean, and this is part of what I mean by Renaissanceism. Like, so these people who took care of you, and I think you're one of these people, had the internal ability to be at one moment being the most violent person that they could be. They are killing and trying to
Apex
kill,
predator.
apex
Apex predator.
predator. And in the next moment, they are treating you with a level of tenderness and care that they would
That a
have to,
mother would.
that a
That a
mother
mother
would.
would.
And so that
Mhm.
human being has to have within them the capacity to be the apex predator and the caring parent to an injured child, all within a very short time frame. And to me, that's an extraordinary sort of level of humanness. So, to tie it just slightly back to like your counseling as a kid, is that in my mind, one of the things that was doing for you was expanding your perspective, expanding who you were as a human being, to like, you had the apex predator in you naturally. You know what? You were under stress, you were ready to fight. But there was within you tenderness and a capability to understand yourself differently that I think softens you. And instead of just becoming soft or hard, you became both. And in the worst moment, perhaps, of your life, you were treated with people who were so strong they could go from being the apex predator to the caretaker quickly enough to save you. And I don't know that there's any experience on the planet, the whole notion of brothers at arms, that is really an analogy to that as a level of, I think, intimacy, because there's such a shared threat and a shared, sense of danger, and then a shared sense of obligation to each other that could exist any other possibility. I mean, is that
Yeah,
a
man.
fair way to understand what you just said?
Yeah, man. 100%. Yeah.
When, as you make that turn from that moment into the beginning of the rest of your life, and you surely have known people who were in a similar pivot, but did not take with them a sense of, hey, finding their new path. Could you talk a little bit about the difference between what you see in yourself that allowed you to survive it, both physically and psychologically, whereas not everybody that you know did survive it? I mean, whether, I don't mean on the battlefield, but I mean
Like
as
turn
they
the corner.
turn the corner. Yes, sir. Yes.
Um, yeah, man. I think that a lot of times, um, gosh, dude, we all get these little whispers in our mind, and you know, we could talk at length about who puts those whispers in our ears. But essentially it's intuition, right? So we have these intuition, these feelings of like, you know, what am I doing here?
Hmm.
What's my new mission and all this stuff.
Right.
And sometimes people don't have the ability to air that stuff out.
Yeah.
Their environment isn't in a people who they surround themselves with isn't in a place to where they can vent and
Right.
air that stuff out and really have a collection of the mind, so to speak, or a camaraderie where it's non-judgmental,
Yeah.
and you could really talk about these things and encourage each other to grow. And luckily for me, my wife is that for me, and I'm that
Yes.
for
Yes.
her.
Yeah.
And and then I also have mentors and friends and stuff.
Yeah.
But when you hear those things of, man, maybe I should be doing stuff like that. Maybe I should be doing this. You
Right.
have to listen to those, man. You have
Yeah.
to sit there and you know, when I got hurt, they put me through like a whole like path of um reintegration into society,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm so wounded and I'm gonna need so much care for the rest of my life.
Right.
The military kind of intercepted me and they put me, whereas the whole military organizations were focused on counterterrorism.
Right.
Now there's these little pockets of, now the mission is these patients.
Yeah.
And with that being said, with that being said, there was a I kind of had a chance to figure it all out, you know what I mean? And to really kind of put things together and like, okay, this is where I'm going. But um, I think at the I completely lost the train of thought, man.
Well, I mean,
Um,
part of it, but let me just tie it back to something you said earlier in the conversation. When you look at 60,000 bees and they are an intimidating force, they are an intimidating force because they are together. And in a sense,
yeah,
the military, in its own way, and I'm sure it's imperfect in its like execution of everything. However, it is trying, and then it's embracing all of its bees to try to take care of you, in a sense. Like, it sounds like you were surrounded, at least by people who were interested in you and that wanted you, and you were able to accept that and find a new path based on like just the way you were cared for on the battlefield. When you got back, it sounds like there was a psychological triage that happened too, to try to like, okay, we got to help you reorient yourself.
yeah, man. And so your question was like, how are those people didn't make it, but they weren't able
Yeah.
to turn the corner? And
Right.
I feel like that, like, dude, you have to find your tribe. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that you can get lost and be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like, I'm lost right now. Where do I go? Can you help me? This doesn't make sense. And really have a place to where um it can be uh nurturing. But at the same time, I'm not talking about coddling.
Right.
I'm just talking about like,
Yeah.
to be able to have a place to where people are you know, encouraging you to grow.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I believe that people uh, only rise to who they really are
Right.
based off the demand of their environment.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So if it's like if so perfect, we'll just use me for an example. Because my family needed me,
Right. Right.
I rose to that occasion.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I rose to that. Because my team needed me on the battlefield,
Right.
I put in the extra work. I raised to that
Yes.
bar, you know. But if nobody demanded anything from me, and if everybody was all like, "Oh, you know, like Portecito, or like poor
Yeah. Right.
baby,
Right.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
look at him, he's missing his legs,"
Right.
then there would be no way for me to, okay, man, I need to learn this. I need to rely on myself and be an effective piece of this team,
Right. Right.
you know, because of that high mentality of that, you know what I mean? Of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I am a part of this, man. You know what I mean? Me and you, we are a part of
Yeah.
all
Yes.
of this. You know
Yes.
what I mean? So it's like, how can I be an effective team member
Right.
with
Yeah.
missing half my body? You
Yeah.
know?
When reading about World War II and Europeans who survived being in the concentration camps, I remember reading something that always stayed with me about survivors that were in the camps and came and then had to live again. And that I was reading this piece that said there were those that came back and they flourished because they recognized this is a short life. This is, we have what we have and we got to cherish it and treat it, as this extraordinary gift. And those people came back with a certain amount of freedom with their wounds of having been through what they've been through, but they came back with they were able to translate the suffering into something beautiful. And then there were those that survived and came back and never got out of it. They came back alive, but they never really lived. And I don't know that there's any analogy to
That's not Viktor
concentration
Frankl.
camps. You know what, Viktor Frankl? Yes, I mean, yes. In fact, it was. And then there's a woman whose name escapes me at the moment, who was the child that came out of that community. And as she grew up,
Wow.
she recognized this like bifurcation in the group. There was a group that was like so full of life, and they wanted to have kids, and they wanted to, just do what they could do to thrive and to create, their part of their tribe to enliven it. Um, and then there were others that just couldn't. It just broke them, and they just never really came back to life. Um, and because our time is limited, and this is a jiu-jitsu podcast, so I have to begin the conversation of like, you come back and your body's different than other people's bodies, and you are entering into a different time of your life. And I'm not sure everybody would say jujitsu is a natural choice, And so I want to hear about, like, of all the ways in which you're going to strengthen your body, join a new community, like what brings you to jujitsu? Because that's how you and I connect, at the beginning. And I love the fact that you picked it and that we're in the
Yeah.
jujitsu tribe together. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what flipped and said, oh, that's for me.
Jiu-Jitsu picked me, you
Ah,
know what
I love
I
it.
mean? So, who I am is somebody who, like, I can't I can't operate in theory. I
Right.
need to know, like, I need
Nice.
to know what it's like to, to feel my body move through space and
Yeah.
time. And uh my kids, you know what I mean? They were the ones that introduced me to jujitsu.
Hmm.
And because, everybody gets peer pressured by Jocko to do jujitsu,
Yeah, right.
and Joe Rogan, and any,
Yeah, right.
Dana White, you know what I mean? Everybody gets
Yeah.
peer pressured into these guys, and
Yeah.
so and you being a podcaster, I'm sure you listen to
Sure.
Jocko. I'm sure you listen to and so uh Jocko's always talking about, do jujitsu, and then get your kids into jujitsu, and so I never thought I could do jiu-jitsu
Right.
because of my injuries,
Right.
and for many reasons. One of it was like, I don't want to be a hindrance.
Mm-hmm.
I think with these injuries, um, you don't ever want to be a burden on anybody.
Yeah. Right. Right.
You don't want to slow them down. You don't want to like because naturally you move slower and stuff like that. It takes you longer to do things. Um, you don't want to be a burden to anybody. And I know that people's knee jerk reactions like, bro, dude, that's silly. Like, and I know it's silly,
Mm-hmm.
but yet I still feel that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. 100%.
So I would sit and watch my kids do jujitsu, and I would just sit there and just be like, oh, look at them have fun. Like,
Yeah.
I can do that. I can do this. And then my professor, Professor Doug, and he's been like a friend I didn't know that I could have,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, a real saint of a human being.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And and he was like, "Hey, man, like, what do you? Um, let's get on the mats." And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Nah, man, like, thanks, but no thanks,"
Right.
And dude, and every professor is like, they shouldn't call him professor. They should call him like Doctor Pressure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's what they should call him
Yeah.
because it's this slow, steady pressure, and it's
Yeah.
just
Right.
like he would just like, and eventually he was so. And me being, I mean, jujitsu isn't in any way, shape, or form convenient.
Right. Right.
Whether it be on your, whether that be on your pocketbook, whether that be on the
Yes. Yeah.
time
Yeah.
that it is,
Right.
whether that be, it really makes you make a stand and be like, I'm going to do this for me. And so I needed some help financially,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to make a financial commitment until I knew that I could do it.
Sure.
Um, and so he introduced me to a program called We Defy.
Okay.
It's a 501c3. Have you ever heard of it?
No, that's new to me. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So We Defy is totally awesome, man. They um they sponsor disabled veterans for a year and give them a scholarship, and they'll pay
Okay.
their dues. They'll pay for they'll get like two gis, rash guards, spats, whatever you need, and they'll pay for your membership for your first year or year and a half, depending on like medical situations or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? But
Right.
um, and this academy that I was going to with my kids is any academy can be associated with We Defy. It's just that it's just a program where the professor has to link up with We Defy and you know um, and be able to accept payment and stuff like that.
Sure.
Through We Defy.
Okay.
And so, dude, they sponsored me, man. I applied. They sponsored me for a year, and then I got on the mats. And that my wife was like, I mean, she loves me, man.
Right.
I don't know why, but uh, we she was like, I gotta go watch you to make sure for my
Sure.
own peace of mind that you're
Yeah.
going to be okay. She goes, I don't know how you're going to do this. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Um, and the overwhelming support of everybody there on
Right.
the mats, ranging from degrees of black belts to white belts,
Right.
um, were like, welcome, brother.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
of
Yes.
us. You know
Yes.
what I mean? You're one of those misguided infants that are here. Uh, and dude, that first practice, I was like, I need to know everything about this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
needed to immerse myself in this. And my wife goes, we get in the car and I'm trying to play it cool. And she goes, so how'd you like it?
Right.
Um, and I was like, honestly, love, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she goes, I could tell because I hadn't seen you smile
Yeah.
that
Nice.
much
Yeah. Yeah.
in like you smiled that whole hour. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
And I was getting smashed, dude. I was getting choked. I was getting, you know what I mean? Like,
It sounds like my
I was just,
every role I've ever had. I'm getting smashed and choked and
yeah, wrist locked, and but the only thing that didn't work was like ankle locks and toe holds on me. You know what I mean? So it's like, so we go and dude, that after that, man, I was like, I need to compete. I need to know,
yeah,
So
like, so tell us, because I mean, let's not first of all, I love that you're the intersection of like people who come to love you and your acceptance of that love, and then you love them back, and that, like, the power within that is so impressive to me, because for you to go from the sidelines to the mat to sitting in the car going, I got to do this, I mean, that's a huge journey just by itself. And then what you're about to tell us, for those of you listening, is that he doesn't stop there. So Julian, you then go and I've seen some footage of this. You go compete. So for me, because we have, I think, a similar disposition, the leap from like training to competing is actually shorter. For you and I understand each other in a way that we know, if we're in this, we got to have a game day. Like, well, come on, I need something to
yeah,
keep the blade sharp. Regardless, we don't care necessarily
yeah,
about like win, lose, or draw. Like, we gotta, if we're here, we're here, baby. Like, I'm the
yeah,
oldest guy in my gym. I don't move for. I have a very patient group of people who like baby me along in my training, and if I'm to be honest about it. But I go to my game days, and I know that was you too. So all of us have anxiety on the way into competition, like making the decision and doing the competition. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
dude. I love this so much that I want to get botched tattooed on me. You know what I mean? Like, uh, um, so the academy I belong to is Gracie Baja,
Right.
and I give good on like Gracie Baja for. I mean, on their gis it says Jiu Jitsu is for everyone,
Right.
and gosh, they're so right. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Not everyone's for Jiu Jitsu, but Jiu Jitsu is for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And um, gosh, man, so I did the CompNet, and I've only done CompNets, which is just the Gracie Baja
Right.
tournaments within its schoolhouses. Um, and the first day I get there, man, I slap hands, and I was like 230 when I started, and then I was at like 220.
Right.
So I was in the heavyweights, man, and this guy was every bit of like 225. Dude, this guy was
Right.
like
Yeah.
big old dude, and like he just, he just wet blanketed me, man. But like I was just like, dude, this is the shit, man. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what it's all about, man.
Right.
And um, to kind of be like at that edge of where
Yes.
you're, almost like a peeping tom, and you're just like, dude, what is going on?
Right.
You want to be at that at that. For me, I love being at that edge of where um you're nurturing your spirit,
Yes.
and at the same time you're like in this um human plane of existence,
Yes.
doing martial arts and jujitsu, but
Right.
really, man, I'm feeding my soul,
Yes. Right. Right.
and
Right.
I get to know like what it's like to feel um free. You
Yes.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm free to express myself
Yeah.
any way I want to
Right.
against another person who's doing the same thing,
Yeah.
and it's all about who's going to get there faster and who's going to get there more efficiently and who's going to get there
That's right.
better position, and then that's all that matters. And it's, you know what I mean, like there, you know and if you get in an awkward position, just tap, dog, and it's all over.
It's
You know
such
what I
an
mean? Like,
honest moment. Like, one of the things I love about my jujitsu practice is that it is an honest experience at that moment. Either you have the position or you don't. And if you are dishonest, you're going to get hurt. If you're like, hey, I don't have the position. I know I don't have the position. I'm going to force my way out of that. That's when you get injured. But if you stay true to the moment, you're actually like, it's one of the few places that I feel like there is meaningful danger that is safe. like choking, breaking limbs, all that, that's serious business. But the instruction and the beauty of the community, when it's properly, I think, done, is that the extreme danger and the safety within it is unique. And that for somebody who's listening that may be seeking a certain amount of like trying to become a more resilient, stronger person, it I think can mimic the experience of something bad without the consequences of something bad. And I mean, I don't know if you'd agree
Yeah.
with that, right? Like if you bring someone
Oh,
on the
dude,
mats and they're like, man, this is the first time everyone, this guy, if he wanted to, this is a bad outcome. But then that ability to tap, I also, in the way that those soldiers took care of you in the moment of like critical need, someone went from being the apex predator to being the nurturer. I feel like it is an analogy to somebody who could break your arm, not breaking your arm, right? They go from the apex predator to respecting your tap and allowing you to learn something in that moment. It's not a perfect analogy, but I feel like it's directionally in the same direction. Someone in one moment they're this way, and the next moment they have to be the other way. I don't know.
yeah, and
I mean, maybe that's extreme.
yeah. It is a bit extreme, but because there's no like, there's this is the only time where I've experienced where we can go to the danger,
Right.
but with the intention of love and somebody's
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
interest
Yeah.
in
Right.
my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I cannot, uh, and I cannot practice jujitsu with hate in my heart.
Yes. Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting.
You can't, because there's this weird thing that happens where like these people, that's all you want to associate with.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? These people, like, you want to know more about them. You only get to see them like an hour and a half, you know, eh, you know,
Yeah.
you know, once a day, or because it's not even that, because sometimes they miss, sometimes you miss,
Sure.
sometimes they go away on a vacation or whatever like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, and you see them and you're like, yo, dog, dude, you're here.
Right.
What's
Yeah.
going on, bro? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I can give a big old hug. Where you
Yeah. Right.
going?
Yeah.
And like, or a guy takes a break because he's injured or something like that. You know what I mean? And it's just
Sure.
like, um, you wouldn't do that with the enemy.
Right.
If I
Right.
would,
Yes. Yes.
no,
Yeah. I
so it's
tell
like,
you. Right.
so as a veteran who has PTSD,
Right.
it was a way of me to really be violent,
Right.
um, but do so in a healthy,
Yeah.
loving kind of way, and to feel the dopamine dump that you
Yeah.
get
Yeah. Right.
is just like, it's not uncommon for me to be like, I love you, dog. I love you, dog.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
you, dog. I love you. Just like, it's just be like, what is it? It's all good.
Well,
You
the
know,
experience of this podcast, Julian, one of the things that's been fascinating is that, I've had a chance to meet people and talk with them who are like super accomplished in the world of jiu-jitsu. I mean, people who, would have a right to be like, hey, who are you? You're a 53-year-old blue belt. You want to come and talk to me about jiu-jitsu? Seriously? Like I can't. And instead, the community they have responded to me with like a respect and an interest and a willingness to kind of be careful with my questions and all of that. And it's all a part of a piece for me. Like there's something about, and I like the way you said it, like to do jujitsu, I think effectively, you can't really have hate in your heart. And even as it relates to like the law enforcement community, right? That this whole movement to teach and to equip our law enforcement community with jujitsu is a movement in my mind to keep everybody safer, like keep our law enforcement community safer because they're more equipped to not get hurt, but also these people that need to be subdued to not do it in a unnecessary, it's violent, but it's violent in a way that is actually safer than the techniques that are currently. So it's just interesting to me because that dials down it ratchets up the violence in a certain sense, but dials down, the consequences of it because of, because it's a certain type of approach. I mean, it may be no accident that it's called the gentle art, I guess, right?
Yeah, man. And the first thing you learn about jujitsu is you don't know who the killers are.
Yeah, yeah,
The
that's
the
right.
big the big barrel chested
Yeah,
dude right
yeah,
there. You're like,
yeah,
oh, he looks dangerous, dude, but it's the guy reading Harry Potter,
yeah,
you know, that's just going to
yeah,
work you over, dude. You
yeah,
know what I mean? And it's just like you just don't know. And
yeah,
so my level of respect for people,
yeah,
I'm a respectful guy
right.
inherently, but to do jujitsu and to walk around town after doing jujitsu, I just respect everybody because I don't know who is out there.
Yeah, no,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
as you know, before I would walk around, I could take that guy. I could take that guy.
yeah,
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 yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a big badass Marine. Yeah,
right, right.
dog. You don't know.
You don't know. I had a bunch of friends who went out to ADCC last year, and I'm like, what was the environment like? Was it like hyper testosterone fuel and everybody like looking to, and they're like, no way. Everybody walked around very, very polite, very, deferential to each other. But I think some of it, Julian, is just that. You have no idea, you know, who you're bumping up
Who's
against
who?
and who's who.
Who's who?
And this is not a place to kind of find out because
No,
it's, and not that, I mean, our community I think is so respectful, but I appreciate what you're saying. Like you got to throw your book of stereotypes out the door, when you get on the mats, because you don't know.
you just don't know, man. And I
All
love
right.
it, man.
Yeah. Well, listen, I got like 20 more hours of things I want to talk to you about, and maybe you'll come back to us, but I gotta respect my promise to keeping this to an hour. But if people want to find you, follow your story, learn about you more, just kind of keep up with what you got going on. What you got any place you want them to come look for you?
Yeah, man. You can come. You just start at on Instagram
Okay.
at coffee underscore with Julian,
Okay.
and let's have a cup of coffee together, man. Let's talk about some stuff. You know what I mean?
I
So,
love it. I love it.
yeah, man. Dude, and then everything there on Instagram, and you can find out more of my story,
Okay.
see clips of me doing jujitsu, subscribe to my podcast as well.
Nice.
Whatever you want, man. Yeah, it's all there, dude. So,
Man.
coffee with Julian.
Julian, I love this conversation, man. We got more to talk about. Maybe we'll do another one in the future, but thank you. I'm so grateful that you took the time today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I love you guys, dude. And
Yeah.
GB Oceanside, baby, come see me.
GB Oceanside. Word.
Yeah. All right, man.
Uh, Um,